Deep South, a simple place for simple people. Filled with friendly people, full of smiles.
You guys ready to order?
We've been over here waiting for you.
I wouldn't want to see you go dying on me now.
Well, looking at sleep at time is not.
Right, you need to turn on the LA 92 somewhere around Anacoco.
Anacoco. Ray, we passed it like 30 minutes ago.
Seriously, you think someone is gonna steal your car here?
Young dead, not rest. Alone. Prepare for what must be done.
We need to leave. Let's go.
What?
Hey everybody, it's your old pal JW back with another Horror Quickies. In this episode, I'm going to be reviewing the independent horror film Zydeco. Now what's different about this film is this movie Zydeco was filmed in 2010 in my hometown. That's right, in my hometown here in Louisiana. And I wasn't here at the time. 2010, I was actually living in Arkansas. I've always wanted to get into filmmaking, but I didn't really decide I hadn't really decided to become a filmmaker till around 2010, 2011-ish. One of the main things that made me want to get into filmmaking is, Jeff Allen is a friend of mine. Hey Jeff, great, listen to his radio show, he's a great dude. I basically had met him, and he was in the film Decadent Evil 2, which was filmed in Arkansas, and he was also in the independent film The Gleaning, rest in peace, Chris. And that kind of inspired me, because to find out a place I had been hanging out with, and people I knew were involved in filmmaking, and it made me want to do it. I mean, I have always thought about it. I had also around that time started, because I was inspired, I had decided, and that's when I started writing my first screenplay, which eventually will become a movie. It's just being my first screenplay, I don't really have the assets to do that one. It would be later that I would learn to write to what I have. I would get better at that. Anyways, Zydeco. 2013, I had decided to move back to my hometown, various circumstances, and I had found out that this movie Zydeco was filmed here. I, went on the internet, saw some articles, and I, ordered a copy from David Noble, and decided, I've had it for a while, and for some reason, I just felt like I wanted to go ahead and do a review of it. Now, keep in mind, when I do film reviews, this is just my personal opinion. I'm just letting you guys know how I felt about the film. Now, Zydeco is a very interesting film, besides being filmed in my hometown, mainly because the director, David Noble, at that time was an officer. I believe he was, you can correct me if I'm wrong, David, I believe you're a major. And I found it interesting because, where we live is very close to a military base, it's a military town. It's kind of interested because myself, besides being in the military myself, my dad was in the military, and You know, it's like a whole running military, like, we're a military family, essentially. I found that kind of interesting. Another interesting fact is Courtney Shea, who is it? I am sorry, Courtney Shea Young, who is one of the stars, is actually, she was former military herself, and she actually is with a friend of mine that I knew when I was stationed Shreveport. So basically, I'm rambling. There's a lot of personal connection, you know, to reviewing a movie that's, you know, filmed in your hometown. Anyways, let's get to it. Okay, overall, I will say that I enjoyed this film. This is very much a throwback to the 80s style of slasher films. Now, the film opens with a statement about the Bloody Benders, which was a real-life family who committed atrocities, killed people. In the beginning statement, it states about the Benders, and it states this story is inspired by them. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. If the film itself has some sort of connection to the Benders, I kind of would have liked that. But at the same time, I think it's kind of cool to kind of get you in the mood, say, you know, this is basically inspired by that. That's kind of where we're going. I dig that, but, and this is just my opinion, I don't really feel like the beginning narration, the beginning text on the blenders, on the Bloody Benders was necessary. I felt like the simple text of inspired by a true story, I felt like that would have been enough. But like I said, this is my opinion coming, what, 12 years later after the film. So it's not a big thing. The opening of the film has the main character, played by Courtney Shea Young, running through the woods being pursued by the Zydeco. I loved it. I loved the intercuts of the action sequences of her running, being chased, and then instead of running credits over it, blackout, credits, scene, blackout. It gives it a very, very cool kind of early 80s slasher feel that I dug. There's a couple of movies that come to mind that it reminds me of, and I can't think of them now, but I really dug that opening. Then they basically do this like montage of certain things in town, the trains, certain businesses. Yeah, it's a small town at the time, and even now we have businesses and buildings that are for sale. And it really does kind of show the rundown aspects of a small town, but at the same time, it's not the whole town. But at the same time, for the purpose of this movie, I really dug that, especially the scene with the train. We're introduced to longtime friends Aaron, played by Courtney Shea Young, and Ray, played by Latasha Williams, who find themselves lost in the backwoods of central Louisiana. When a store merchant leads them to the local fortune teller, all hell breaks loose, and the two girls find themselves on the run from Zydeco, played by Elgin Foster. Now, Elgin Foster as the Zydeco, very physical presence. His character basically is a killing voodoo created killing machine. So he doesn't have any lines, but he does a lot of little physical movements with his body that kind of reminds me of an early Kane Hodder. Some of those like little slight movements. He sells it with his physical presence, which I thought was very impressive. Very believable threat. Now that said, the two leads playing Aaron and Ray, Courtney Shea Young and Latasha Williams, I thought they were wonderful. You totally believe them as besties. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to find out they're friends to this day off screen. But they had a nice chemistry. One issue I had is in the film, and this is just me. It's not really this is not really a crack on the film whatsoever, but it's something that I believe is a generalization. Terms like lost in the backwoods of central Louisiana, and in the film, anybody who's lived in central or northern Louisiana knows the accents are different. You're gonna get more twang in the South. Central Louisiana, and I'm not busting on this film at all, because I enjoyed this film very much. You know, but you know what? I'm nitpicking, but it's like when they do movies in Shreveport or Bossier City where the Louisiana accent tends to be more of like a West Texas drawl, for lack of a better term. I felt like it's fine because there are some people that live in this town that do have that. It's just, I felt like, you know, this isn't the Deep South, it's Central Louisiana. Now, I'm just nitpicking, okay? It's not a big deal. But little things like, if you actually live here, and it's probably what it is because I'm from here, I live here, little things like where Anacoco is in regards to other places, you know, it's because you know these places, and you know, yeah. But for someone who isn't from here, it's not a big deal, and I'm not saying it's a big deal for me. I don't even know why I brought it up. Anyways, moving on. Basically, they have a little montage where they're in town. They're trying to, where they were headed to, they were supposed to turn off in Anacoco, and they show this cool this scene where, you know, they missed Anacoco. It's in the trailer. Basically, they're in our town. You know, they're basically, the store owner directs them to a store merchant who also, basically she's a store merchant, but she's also a local fortune teller. They offend her, and she pulls hair from Aaron's head, and as they leave to go in the cafe, the fortune teller basically commands the Zydeco to hunt him down and kill him. And the rest of the film is pretty much a straightforward chase. For what they had to work with in this film, I really thought it was a great film. I really enjoyed a lot of the chasing. The two leads were wonderful. There's humor in it that kind of reminds me of it. Not tongue-in-cheek humor, which I enjoyed. There's a little bit of humor in there for situational humor is the best term I could come up with, and I really enjoyed that they didn't go super cheesy, with the exception of one scene later. They filmed this movie in our town, or cafe. The cafe in the town, if you watch this movie, the cafe in the town's no longer, I mean, the cafe still, that location is still serving food, but it's been like 5, 6, maybe 7 different, I could be exaggerating, but it's been a bunch of different places. It's still there. It's under a different name, but you can still eat in that location. It's just a different restaurant. They kind of go through a change periodically. Basically, I enjoyed this film. They also filmed on the racetrack, Speedway racetrack, which was, somebody recently bought it and is using it as a racetrack again, sorry. There's a lot of cool scenes, especially when Aaron's captured. There's a lot of good scenes, but the main, here's the thing. I did like this film. I enjoyed this film very much. Very, very fun throwback to 80s style slasher films. My issue is, and I do think this was done intentional, and it just depends on who you are, it's just there is, once Erin escapes, it goes into this, okay, in horror films, you want to build up the character as much so when they die, their deaths mean something, but, and as in most slasher films, there are throwaway characters. There is literally a scene where it's from throwaway to throwaway. It's like, oh, help me, and then, oh, you're dead, and move on. And I felt like don't get me wrong, it's kind of, in one sense, it's kind of funny because that's literally what happened in the 80s movies, like especially in the third act of a slasher film like this one. You literally have people just showing up and, oh, this guy could possibly save me, and then they get cacked. On one hand, I enjoyed that because it's like the worst luck in finding help, right? At the same time, I felt like if they could have had like a small scene with some of these people earlier, like during the montage when they're shopping, I don't believe there is, I might have to go back and look, but I felt like there could have been at least a visual establishment of these characters that they get like killed, but like I said, I'm just nitpicking. Now, like I said, I bought this film from David Noble some years ago, and I highly recommend it. See, the thing is, when you're reviewing a film, you are going to nitpick a few things. There's a few things that may bother me that don't bother you, but I believe in not giving any spoilers when you review a film, and I also believe in just giving your honest opinion. I'm going to tell you what I thought of a film, and I'm going to tell you if I think it's worth your time, and it's up to you to decide whether or not that's what you want to do. Now, I enjoyed this film very much. This is the unrated cut. It's a little bit longer. The main thing to know about this film is the running time's 50 minutes. So it's 50 minutes. Now, some people make a big stink about, let's be honest, the sweet spot for length as far as slasher films go is generally going to be about 90 minutes, hour and a half. There's some movies that are shorter. I mean, I recently watched a film called Carver, which I thought was pretty good, that I found out was, directed by a 13-year-old. I'm like, that's pretty impressive. The film itself was like an hour and 15 minutes. I'm not a huge stickler for being over an hour. Now, this version, the unrated director's cut, has some additional scenes that were shot in Korea, of all places. Now, when I saw this film, even before I read that, I already knew it because I recognized the how can I say this, like the office setups and stuff, being a military member who was stationed in Korea myself. Overall, I enjoyed this film, and I think you guys will like it. When you just go into it wanting to watch a fun 80s style slasher film, a lot of the stuff is intentional, and it adds to the entertainment of the film, in my opinion. Now, Zydeco. Alright? And I will see you guys in the next Horror Quickies. See ya.